Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Utah Film Pod. My name is Josh Terry. I'm here with Danny Hatch, my co-host, and we have Utah news, we have movie reviews, we have President's Day stuff, and it's all free. Now, that's some value.
We should,
Danny, welcome back.
We should charge some like tax with this or something, make a little bit of something off of it, with tax season coming up. Isn't that?
I think tax season, and maybe just a little bit of a hint as to our news segment in a moment. Wow,
Oh,
that's
that was
it's all coming
unintentional.
together. It's all coming together.
No, yeah. So funny you say that because there is a very interesting story that is kind of all over Utah news right now, and tax related, just like you said.
Yeah, that's right. I was just reading about this morning in preparation for our podcast. I guess Kevin Costner has his eye on the Beehive State, or he has his eye on it, and he's hoping to film in it, I guess is the idea. So this is now there is math and numbers involved, but we're not going to delve too deeply into all that kind of stuff. Not on a Saturday morning when I'm trying to
Not during a tax season either.
Hey, believe it or not, I actually got all my tax stuff turned in already. I know it's kind of strange. Well,
We did it.
so you too, huh? Oh, well, good for
Well,
you.
I mean, it's
Good for
okay.
you.
Here's the thing: tax season is wonderful for someone in my situation because it's like student, dirt poor, and it's like it's free money month, and I'm just so I was on top of that. I thanked my parents. I'm like, hey, thank you so much for giving me this large paycheck, and no,
Oh, that's great.
rub it in
No,
their face a little bit.
Yeah, well, part of me. So the reason that I get more of a jump is because I'm an S corporation. Like when anybody says that corporations aren't people, that's not true because I am a corporation and I am a human. But our due dates are earlier. Like I have to do the whole quarterly tax stuff, and and so I have to. I think our returns are actually due mid-March instead of mid-April. And so,
Oh,
yeah, so
interesting.
there's just more of an incentive to kind of get. No, that's the thing is if you do a lot of like freelance work, it's like I'm just repeating the advice I was given years ago that you're just a lot better off if the kind of the single proprietor S corporation, like those kind of things. It's just financially smarter. And I don't know if this is relevant. Do our listeners care about this? Are we still listening? Did we turn people off?
They're all like, we wanted our good old escapism. How dare you?
I know. Well, let's get back to that. So so back to the story.
So back to taxes.
Right. So back to no. So Kevin Costner has this new series that he wants to film, and he wants to do it in Utah because he loves Utah, and who can blame him? It's an incredible place. I'm getting excited to go drive down that direction in southern Utah next month. But I guess the question is, there are certain tax incentives that a new bill is supposed to address, and if that bill passes, the idea is it's supposed to make filming in Utah more attractive to outside, production companies and all this kind of thing. And so basically, if we can. We meaning the legislature. I'm not a member of the legislature. To my knowledge, I don't.
That's the spirit. Now you sound like a politician.
Yeah, I will not confirm or deny that I am a member of the Utah legislature. But and so I guess what it comes down to is show them the money, and they will come and presumably bring in more money because. The idea is, if we're filming in these communities, we're bringing in money and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Danny? Do we need to appease the demands of the Hollywood jet set?
I know that's how this is being framed, but I'm just so surprised there's this debate because, like, a lot of people are coming out this super negative, like, this is going to be like Hollywood or like, how dare they want this from us? And it's like, honestly, if you look at it the flip side, it's just that they're bringing more money. Like, productions, especially, like, this one looks to be, like, really, really big. Like, that's going to bring in a lot of money. And it's, like, something we wouldn't have otherwise. And like
Yeah.
Utah has this, and the thing that I was most surprised by is that there was this cap. Like I was just, I'm surprised that this hasn't been done before, because this is about rural communities, which is even better. Like those are great spots for filming, and you can really boost the local economy. Like, I mean, it's such a great thing. So I'm surprised that this hasn't already, taken place.
So I don't know. Maybe I should have done a little bit more research before recording. But
Yeah.
when I hear about stuff like this, I'm interested to know what impact is really being made, right? Because that's always the pitch. If such and such. But I mean, we're in the middle of the Olympics right now, and another good example, because that was the argument, is, oh well, if we host the 2002 Olympics, it's going to boost Utah's economy. It's going to put us on the world stage, and so whether it's bringing in film production or whatever, hey, we're gonna bring in a Walmart to the community, and so whenever it seems to me like these things are always kind of positioned as, well, this is going to bring in more money to your community if you allow this entity to come do work or whatever. And I have no doubt that, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was the case. I am kind of curious to know what the real impact is, though, like in terms of just like, is there a way to kind of demonstrate that, well, by having the Olympics, we benefited this way, or it didn't really make that much of a difference, And so I'm kind of wondering, because we've had film production in Utah there's all kinds of places that have been filmed in Utah, and so this is really nothing new. It's not like Hollywood has suddenly discovered southern Utah. I mean, I was down in Monument Valley a few years ago watching Stagecoach, and they filmed it down in Monument Valley, and you can see the mittens in the background and all that, and so I don't know. I know that we talk about these things on the surface quite a bit, but I've never really taken the time to dig in and see what's the honest pros and cons impact here, and so anyway, I mean, I don't particularly feel like it's Kevin Costner is trying to manipulate the good people of Utah to save a few bucks on his movie overhead, but it also, I don't know.
The reason for it's more just the competition side of things. Like, these states are all kind of, trying to auction off their state to be filmed in, right? So, like, I think this has come because, like, Montana, for example, has been raising their cap, and I also see in this article, like, Texas, New Mexico, like, there are other states nearby where it's, like, arguably, they're kind of similar to Utah, and so it's like, why not just go there instead? So it might just kind of be that, when there's a huge supply of options, that's when you have to add those incentives.
Well, and that's, when you say that, the first thing that springs to my mind, which is another kind of topic to unpack, is that, well, the other places don't have what Utah has, like in terms
Absolutely.
of, but what I'm thinking, and by that I mean, I'm thinking about specific locations, Arches, and I'm thinking about, of course, Monument Valley is actually like half in Utah and half in Arizona, so we got to be technically correct there, but like, Bryce Canyon and Zion and Capitol Reef and all these places. But then again, I'm thinking, well, they really film in national parks though? And so, but anyway, it's just something interesting to think about, and I guess it's just a good piece of Utah film news that appropriately enough has found its way onto the Utah Film Pod. So
yeah, so I mean, we're doing our duty.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Would you like to wax nostalgic on the work of Kevin Costner since we brought him up?
What's so funny? I haven't seen a lot of Kevin Costner stuff, so I'm not sure if I could really. Because he's Dances with Wolves, right? I feel like that's maybe the only.
Well, and that's an interesting generational comment you just made, because I think that people more my age are well aware of his, a lot more, I guess, experienced with his films.
Oh yeah, and I know he is big. Yeah, I don't mean to.
Well, no, but
he's some nobody
I mean
trying to film in Utah. Like, who is this guy?
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that, but I think what's interesting is that I don't know if it would be fair to say like his peak or his heyday was a while ago now. I mean the I remember a few years ago reviewing like two or three of his movies over the course of like just a couple months, and it felt
Mm.
like, hey, wow, Kevin Costner's back, because I just, you hadn't seen him do a whole lot.
Hmm.
Whereas back when, back in the early 90s, he was doing regular big budget kind of blockbuster type productions, whether they, because Waterworld was always seen as this big flop, and but like I said, there was Dances with Wolves, there was the Robin Hood movie. The first thing I ever saw him in was Silverado, which I still say is one of the best westerns. If you have any interest in westerns at all, Silverado is a fantastic movie, and he plays a supporting role in that. He also plays a dead body in a movie called The Big Chill, but that's why the members of your generation, Danny, are just not as familiar with the vast.
Hey, you know what? I've been wanting to see Waterworld so bad, So I mean, like, I'm trying to acquaint myself better.
Man,
It's all about
is this that
improvement.
youthful sarcasm you're using again?
No, actually, okay. I became fascinated with Waterworld at Universal Studios
Yeah,
in
because they made a
California.
ride out of the thing, even though it was a flop movie. What the
No,
heck
no,
is going
no.
on with
So
that?
they have this show, a stunt show, and I love stunt shows. And this one was just like,
Ah,
oh my goodness, it was so fun. The cast was like so funny. Like there was just so much personality, and I'm like, what is this thing? Like it was just so. But it was also very like stylized after the film too, and I'm just like, what is
yeah,
this? And found out about the movie, and what a sad flop because it was so expensive to make. And honestly,
yeah.
I think it's a great premise that I'd like to see them revisit.
Well, it was a cool idea. I mean,
Yeah.
it was basically Mad Max on the water,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
What I remember is not thinking, "Oh, this is terrible." Because I went and saw it, and I remember it, being watchable and fine.
Hmm.
But I also have not had the impulse to rewatch it in what, like the 25 years since it came out.
Mm.
So that's kind of the best, verdict I can draw, is that it was fine at the time. I
Mm.
didn't remember. I don't remember coming out of it thinking, "Oh my gosh, that was terrible." Like, because there are definitely movies where it's like, "Oh, that's garbage. I never want to touch that again." This was just a movie that I saw. I remember that people said it was a flop. I didn't think it was that bad, but I also have had no interest in ever rewatching it.
Mm.
So
No, that's fair.
yeah. So should we cut back in then?
Yeah, yeah, back to
Yeah.
business.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Well, we have a few new movies to cover this episode. The pace seems to be picking up a little bit in
oh
the
yeah.
the releases of 2022, and I think the most appropriate one to start off with would be Uncharted, which you have already reviewed and
Hmm.
posted to the Utah.film website. So how about I let you lead off and tell us a little bit about Uncharted?
No, absolutely. So I saw this movie basically as soon as it came out. Like I really wanted to see what this movie would be like as soon as I could and get talking about it because Uncharted is based on my one of my all-time favorite video game series. I love it so much. It's very much similar to that Indiana Jones adventure, searching for the treasure and the puzzles, and it's so much fun. And I was really excited when I heard this movie was going to come out, and of course, like being an ultra fan, right? Like I had some hesitancies, but I think it was pretty good. This movie kind of takes that origin story kind of look where you're taking iconic characters of Nathan Drake and Victor Sullivan and how they met. Nathan Drake is this scrappy young thief who is kind of this ultimate history nerd, and he just knows about all these random like lost treasures of the world, and Victor Sullivan is kind of this more experienced treasure hunter who recruits him because he used to work with Nathan's brother Sam, and so He kind of convinces him to join him, go across the world to find Magellan's lost treasure when he was circumnavigating the globe. I think the script was probably just the best part because it captured exactly what the games feel like, just with the dialogue and the tropes. The plot line matched it so well. It was so fun to see that. And I mean, it's so hard for me to talk about this movie, and it's like, knowing that a lot of people probably don't know about this game. Like, do you know about this game at all?
No.
Okay, yeah. So, but just as an adventure story, like, I think this was a great time. I really liked Holland and Wahlberg's chemistry. I think they bounced off each other really, really nicely. The thing that I was most nervous about coming into this was just from that fan standpoint, where it's like, when I saw who they casted as these two leads, it's just like, Wahlberg's supposed to play this guy who's like a grandpa who smokes on his cigar and flies planes. Like, that's his character.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it was so bizarre seeing that, where they're kind of closer in age. And like, but Holland's like, okay.
Were you just dazzled by Tom Holland's dreamy eyes?
Oh my gosh. No, so here's the thing, and this is my hot take. I don't get the Tom Holland, Timothy Chalamet love.
Aha, so it's the opposite.
Yeah, no, so that's the thing. It's like Nathan Drake's like a who would I compare him to? Kind of almost like a Harrison Ford. Like, just someone who's like, I don't know, more of a man, and like Tom Holland's a kid. So it's just it's so
okay.
weird to me. But I mean, he delivered those lines so well. Like, I mean, if you don't know these characters, you're gonna like them. They're so funny, they're so quick. It was a really, really fun time. And so I had to tell myself, it's like, hey, you know what, they're making it their own. And like I said, it's kind of this origin story. Like, it's kind of hinting that Mark Wahlberg's kind of like aging, kind of becoming more that character as time goes on. So I had to remind myself that I'm like, okay, this is just them younger, and Tom Holland is like extremely young. But and I mentioned this in my review. They had Tom Holland around alcohol so often, and I wonder if it was to remind us that he's above the age of 21. Like, I don't know. I thought that was just so funny to be like, no, this isn't high school Spider-Man. This is a man, and he's out on a mission to steal stuff. And it's just like, okay. That was really weird. And it's like, again, kind of like out of character a little bit, but it was fun, and it was just, I used the word respectful in my review, because like, I think that was the most important thing, where it's like, it knows the tropes, it knows how the game works, and so it showed that. It had a cameo of the guy who plays the original Nathan Drake, and
Yeah.
it was fun. Like, I mean, just, it's a great time, and so I really recommend this movie for fans, and for people who don't know anything about the series. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. But yeah.
Okay. So should I respond now?
If you want, if there's anything you're wondering. Do you have any questions about this one?
No, I have no questions at all. I have a take on it, though.
Oh,
because I saw
please.
the movie, too.
Did you really?
Oh, you didn't know that?
No! I thought this was going to be one of the
I
ones you
saw it.
skipped. Oh, wow. Okay, what do you think?
What you said was really interesting to me, because initially what I took from your take on this was that this was a good movie for fans of the game, right? And I think that
Yeah.
that's a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the perspective I'm coming from, so that's probably...
Right.
Yeah.
No, and so I think that if we were to summarize, if we were to encapsulate Danny's take on Uncharted, this is a good movie for fans. You did highlight some things, though, that made me wonder if fans would be turned off, like the idea that you've got Tom Holland in the role instead of somebody who's a little bit older. Because that was one of the things that made me really dislike this movie.
Interesting.
I did not like this movie very much. I mean, the way I would summarize my take is that it's decent for a February release. It's decent for a video game movie. and that's not really high praise, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Because here's
I
my thought. I thought that Tom Holland was picked so that, the likes of you could enjoy this, whatever. Like,
the
get a popular
Well,
name
let
in
me let
there.
me expand. Let me
Yeah.
expand a little bit. So I thought that, fun idea is just kind of your basic kind of National Treasure, Indiana Jones
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
of thing, which is fine. But there, it was just so over the top and so kind of silly and ridiculous, and I felt like I didn't like the script. I didn't like the story very much. I really struggled with the characters because they just like I really enjoy Tom Holland as an actor. I really like Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, yeah.
I really like Antonio Banderas, and
He was great.
but the characters weren't very likable. I mean, one of the first things we see is Tom Holland, stealing from some innocent girl, and it's like I know that we can't obligate him to be Peter Parker in every movie that he does, but the thing is, like it or not, he has a very innocent, pure look about him, and
Mm,
trying to kind of translate him into this kind of rough around the edges, I don't know. I think it's really really tricky to make movies about good bad guys, right? Like
mm-hmm.
thieves, right? Like the
Yeah.
Ocean's movies, especially first, the first Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Ocean's 11 was fantastic. Like that's, if you're going to
That's the
cheer for
perfect
the bad
example
guys,
of.
that's the perfect example.
Yeah.
This one just didn't work for me because nobody was really likable enough. I didn't like the whole because you also have Sophia Ali, who's kind of like a fellow treasure hunter criminal that I don't know. I just so this
Mm-hmm.
this is so initially as you were describing your take on this movie, my instinct was, oh, okay. So if you are familiar with the video game, you're really going to enjoy this. But if you don't have that familiarity with the video game, you're not going to have that connection. And I just didn't. I
Yeah.
really and I don't feel like it's fair to compare every movie in a genre to the absolute best movie of its genre.
Fair
Okay.
enough.
So while I'm watching Uncharted, I'm thinking I can't just judge this movie because it's not Raiders of the Lost Ark, because not every
Nothing will
movie
ever
can
be.
be
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. And here's the big but. They point out Indiana Jones in this movie,
They do.
right?
Yeah.
And
No,
when
it's
you
true.
when
It's
you go
true.
out of your way to say, "Hey, when did you become all Indiana Jones?" It's like, "I'm sorry, now you have to be judged accordingly." And so if you're making an effort, if you're making an obvious, explicit, transparent effort to set yourself up against something like that, I presume a lot of the audience is going to start making comparisons. And Uncharted, is not in the same league. It has its good points, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't want to completely crap all over this movie. I'm just going to largely crap all over this movie. This is the fundamental issue: is that Indiana Jones, like Raiders of the Lost Ark in particular, also Last Crusade, and less so with Temple of Doom. The reason that series and that characterization is so good is because Indiana Jones as a character is, and I've heard this said elsewhere, so I can't take credit for this observation entirely, but he is not quite up to the task, and so it's he's always kind of overmatched, very very human, very very flawed, and so he
Mm,
needs a little bit of luck to be successful, and that's what makes these movies, as crazy as they are, makes them believable and makes them enjoyable. With Uncharted, it's like I see a CGI Tom Holland jumping. This is in the first 5 minutes of the movie, jumping from you know airline baggage, pallets in the middle of the air, and it's just too much. It's just
yeah.
too over the top, too overblown. And again, and this is where I think it'd be really cool to hear from you, because
Hmm.
if that's evoking what the game is like, then that's fine.
Hmm.
but if you don't have that, it's like this. I'm sorry, this just looks stupid, and
Yeah, no,
I don't buy this.
that's totally fair.
And also have to admit that I'm not a gamer. I am not a gamer by any stretch of the imagination, and so you can lump me in that category of critics who are always unimpressed with video game movies, but I don't know. I mean, because initially I just wanted to say, okay, well, it sounds like this is a great movie for fans of the game. Non-fans are not going to be that impressed, but it seems
Okay.
like you kind of had some misgivings about the interpretation as well, i.e., Tom Holland, who
Yeah.
honestly, because I noticed that too, like the fact that they always had him, behind the bar. It's like, dude,
Or
this
getting
kid
drunk.
looks
Yeah.
well, like this kid looks like he's going to get carded for the next 10 years of his life. Making him a bartender almost seems insulting. This is, yeah. So I'm with you on that. Like, and
Yeah.
I think that, maybe not somebody as old as Mark Wahlberg, but it sounds like it should have been an older actor in the Tom Holland role, and then, you know, somebody like, because you said that the Sully should have been a lot older,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway.
No, absolutely. That is definitely, I think, a big just. It was just such a strange choice, and I really did think it was for the audiences who aren't familiar with Drake. But it's funny that you say that because it's like, those lines that I'm like, oh my goodness, Nathan Drake would totally say that. But it's like coming from the mouth of babes. It's a little odd. So no, I think that's so interesting that you pointed that out. And I do have to say with the opening scene, that's kind of what made me love what they were doing, because in the video game, like during like the tutorial phase, you're always jumping forward to some kind of moment where
Yeah.
Nathan is like hanging over a cliff or something, and he has to climb up because it's a platforming game, right? So seeing
Right.
him jump across the crate, like trying to like climb up, was just so true to that story, and so that's why I think those kind of choices were made. But yeah, it is ridiculous, and so it's totally fair. I think in
Because
that
it
way.
makes me wonder if it's just kind of another example of why video games just really struggle to translate into movies, right?
Mm,
Because I think if I had played that game based on what you're describing,
yeah,
that opening scene would have been like it would have been like a knowing callback to, oh my gosh, they're recreating
exactly,
exactly what you do in the game. And
exactly.
so it doesn't make it believable. And maybe that's the problem, is that you're trying to take something that is acceptable within a video game universe and trying to present it in live action is just the believability is just never going to,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I just wonder, because, like, I mean, the big thing that I felt for people who don't know the game, I mean, did you think it was, like, fun at all? Because I feel like that's kind of the main element, is that it's
Not as
just.
much as it should have been. I mean,
Okay,
there
that's
were,
fair.
like I say, I think the nicest thing I can say is that if if you need a little bit of escapism in a stretch of the year where you don't have a whole lot of big movies, you do want to go out to a theater, I could justify this as a, kind of a discount Tuesday, kind of a fun thing.
Hmm.
Speaking as somebody who's not familiar with the game and is not a gamer,
No, I'm glad. I'm
but
glad we
but
have this
beyond that,
perspective.
like I think that there is a reason that this is coming out now instead of like in June.
Mm. Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Well, I feel like I need to rewrite my review now because I
Great.
just
Do I
I
have to go find a
totally
new co-host
thought.
now?
No, I totally thought that I'm like, oh man, this is such a great movie to recommend to people who
Oh no.
aren't familiar. Because I mean, honestly, what I almost titled the review was that Uncharted is this Cliff Notes version of the game. Because okay, I do want to insert this in
Yeah.
because another point that you made was about the likability of the characters, and I think that was very poorly handled, and it might be the casting choice. I think it was the script because so I can see that with Tom Holland, but especially with Mark Wahlberg's character. I was thinking
So you
about the.
didn't like him?
No, I liked him. I didn't
Oh,
like
okay.
what they did to him because he's.
Okay.
What I said in my review is that he goes through this forced character arc that is just so against Sully's character. Like it is what he's not. And so
Uh,
that was very frustrating for me because he is like my favorite character in the game. And
yeah.
so the game in the series that I think this is most based on is kind of this one where it's like you don't know what Sully's intentions are. Like, can you actually trust him? And just it's kind of shrouded in mystery a little bit. Like after playing the game for so long, players are now confronted with this question of like, wait, do we really know this guy who's just always had our back? Like, do we really know him? Because he's a
Yeah.
thief. And so I thought that was a great question that drove the whole game. And then at the very end, it's like, well, yeah, he's still our lovable Sully. Like, of course he's gonna have our back. How could we have ever doubted him? And this movie did not give him that. And I mean, like, there was still that mystery, but like, kind of pretty immediately, you know that he's not honest, and I think that made him a lot less likable. And so, because there's kind of this, and it's an idea presented in the game. It's like this, the code of thieves, where it's like, even though y'all are rascals, it's like there's still some goodness in some of them, especially Nathan Drake, where it's like, I'll do this, but I wouldn't do that. And
Hmm.
they draw the line differently, but they still have these moral codes that they follow. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think this movie showed that well, and I think that would have really enhanced likability. But like I said, I think this is supposed to be an origin story, so it's like they haven't
Oh, it's
developed
clearly
that
they.
yet.
No, they definitely set up. They
That,
want to do a sequel. That's for sure.
but exactly. So in that ending, I feel like they are more those characters that do have that trust and that bond. And so maybe it was that they were trying to like show these characters come closer together, but
Hmm.
it felt very out of character for who they're established in the franchise. So
Yeah.
I do think they could have done a better job in making them likable, but I think they wanted that conflict and that introduction kind of. And I think that was disappointing, but that's why I say like I'm excited to see what comes next, because I feel like, okay, we've had the arc, they're good now, like they're trustworthy thieves now, we can get over that. So but I do
Okay.
agree with you
Well,
there.
you'll have to.
What?
I would be surprised if they made a sequel to this movie.
Makes me so
I don't
sad.
see it.
Didn't they make a lot of money though? It's been out for 3 days, and it says it's heading for like 50 million.
Yeah. No, it's
But I don't know how much it cost to make it, because I think it was pretty expensive. So
yeah.
I think that's going to be for them to judge if it's worth it to put the money
Right.
in. But
Right. So based on what I'm hearing from you, and based on kind of what we're seeing from early returns and stuff like that, I think this is going to be one of those movies that I'm going to be really interested to reflect on a year from now, because
hmm,
I can say that right now I didn't like it. I don't expect it to be great. I don't. I can say that I didn't like it, and I don't expect it to turn into a series like it wants to.
hmm,
But who knows? I could be wrong.
we'll see. But I mean,
Yeah.
now I'm concerned about my own judgment a little bit, because I gave another pretty favorable review this since we last recorded for "Marry Me," which was
Ah.
kind of the big budget romance movie coming out on Valentine's Day weekend, um, starring Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson. And I mean, if anyone hasn't heard about this, like, you must not be on social media, because I think they really pushed this one hard. And I'm guessing I mean, it was so big, with these big names and like big sets and concerts, and it was quite the show. And with that whole escapism idea, like, if you're not feeling like that adventure escapism, this big star kind of escapism might be up your alley. So yeah, so the premise of this is that Jennifer Lopez plays Jennifer Lopez as this huge international superstar, and she's going to marry her fiance on stage, who's also a big star. And she finds out, like, the second before she goes on stage, that he was cheating on her. And so She gets up there and starts monologuing and decides she needs a change. And she picks out a random guy in the audience who's carrying a "Marry Me" sign. And she says, "I'll marry you." And they get married before this huge crowd. Um, and I really liked this premise because the way that scene was set up, it felt like the climax of a rom-com. And
Oh, okay. So
and
starting at the end.
yeah, exactly. And so I think it's really good to look at marriage that way, where you think, oh, I made it and this is great, right? But then it's like, there's still like logistical things and getting used to being with this person, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted them to explore it a little bit more, and they kind of did the first couple minutes, especially since these worlds colliding. She's this pop star, but then Owen Wilson's character just happened to be at this concert because he's trying to win the affection of his apathetic preteen daughter, and
Good
and
luck.
I know exactly, and he's kind of this pathetic divorcee.
He's Owen Wilson.
Yeah, he's Owen Wilson. I'm telling you.
Well,
like,
no, not. I honestly, I have no idea what his marital status is. I don't mean it in that way. What I mean is, like, Owen Wilson is kind of like the perfect, lovable sad
yes.
sack, right?
Oh,
Like he's never really on top of his game. He's always kind of beleaguered and but like I say, he's kind of like this beloved, so I think that sounds like a perfect casting to make him the crapped on single dad.
And he totally is, and the dad jokes are real. Like, I mean, they hit hard, but I mean it, and the performances are the leads, especially. Like, it's just that's the best part of the film. I think Lopez, she's great in her role, and Wilson's of course perfect in his, and even the music performances were pretty solid. A little risque in some parts, so parents be warned. And but I mean, very good. Her fiance is played by Maluma. I'm not familiar with him, but apparently he's an artist, and his voice is beautiful. Like, oh my goodness, like it was fun. Something funny that I do feel about this, a lot of people have been calling this a rom-com, and I think in some ways it does kind of have the tropes, like, meeting in a strange way, or like, the forced relationship and the third act conflict. But I think they wanted something very just sincere and not very silly. There are some great jokes. It did make me laugh. But it's more, on the sweet side of it, and it's just it was very nice, fun. I It is kind of a little bit of a product of its time. There's a lot of like TikTok shots, which I don't understand, but they were there, and
well, maybe they were a sponsor. Were they?
I wonder. There were definitely some sponsors in there, but kind of very self-aware about those. But like, it was also they were definitely striving for diversity and like sharing these messages. And like, the diversity was kind of cool. Like, Owen Wilson's a teacher, and so it showed a classroom with like a good variety of kids, and it wasn't in a natural way of like, oh, we have to have our token whatever character. It just seemed like this is normal life, and you would kind of see that. But there were other times where Jennifer Lopez would be like preaching to the kids, almost into like, hey, you just gotta be true to yourself, or sometimes I'm scared. And it's like, no one breaks out of a scene and gives this speech like that. Like, it was so unnatural, and it really pulled me out of the movie. But besides that, like, I think it was very, very solid, and yeah.
No, well, I think what you're illustrating is something here again, something that I emphasize in my classes, and I think applies to movies as well, is this the whole show don't tell,
Yeah.
I mean, because when something is just being presented as just kind of matter of fact and natural, and it's right there, you're seeing it, you're taking it in.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times, and I've seen this with all sorts of like any message based movie, there are times when it feels like, and I have to say, I have not seen Marry Me. Now, so take this as a grain of salt, but like it seems to me that when a movie is more interested in getting a message across than telling a good story, that's when it runs into problems, and that's where you get kind of the soapbox preachiness and like I said, I've seen it all over in various movies, and it drives me crazy because it's like, just tell me the story. If you tell a good story, those messages will come through, and they don't have to be explicit. They don't have to be spelled out. You don't have to, have a character give some big speech to spell everything out, right? And so, again, not having seen Marry Me, I assume that's what you're referring to here. But I've certainly seen it elsewhere.
No,
Now,
it's funny because like it's like that, but then it's almost as if like, oh, we're having this little side thing going on, and we need to talk about this. So it'd be completely unrelated to the plot, but it's like,
right.
oh, this is our stance on this issue and this topic, and we need to talk about it. And it's like, it has nothing to do with the story. So it's something they couldn't even show because it was irrelevant. It was so weird.
No, and it's again, not having seen the movie, just in general, that to me smacks of poor movie making, right?
Yeah.
Because the movie, if the movie is done well, it can communicate those messages in a more skillful and resonant way. If you have to put the brakes on everything and have somebody step up on a soapbox about whatever issue, I think that just means that, when you watch deleted scenes on a movie and you get the director's commentary, they never say, we cut this because it was crap, right? They never say, oh, I can't believe this was so stupid. What were we thinking? They always say, oh, we loved this. This was such a great, and so did such a great performance. They did such a great job, but it interrupted the flow, and and we sacrificed it for pacing, and it just wasn't, it was a distraction.
Yeah.
And I think that the same thing applies where, oh, it's just so important, I just have to say this. Well, maybe it's the wrong movie for it. Maybe it doesn't belong in this movie. Maybe there's a better way to do it. Maybe there's a way to show it instead of having somebody stop and tell us this.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, to be fair, because we're kind of talking about, having, message about diversity and stuff like that. I think that the same problem comes up all the time in a lot of faith-based movies, where it's very clear that the movie is more interested in delivering its message about some kind of, faith-related issue than telling a good story. Whereas if you just told a good story, that message would still come through. And that stuff, it drives me nuts, because it gets a lot of, in some cases, the entire genres kind of labeled as inferior because they're more interested in X than Y, and I don't know. And now here I am on a soapbox on a podcast preaching.
We break our Marry Me review for
Yeah. Now, of course, based on, Uncharted, I think we can probably assume that I would hate Marry Me. And so just fill in.
It's cute though. And I mean, like, these performances are just so fun, great chemistry. Like that was cute. But
yeah. Now, you could prove me wrong here, and feel free to do so. But I think we're a little bit more in agreement on our final review today.
Yeah.
So Kenneth Branagh is back with another Agatha Christie movie. He did Murder on the Orient Express a couple years ago, and now we've got Death on the Nile. And we kind of hinted at this in the last episode. I really liked this one. I specifically liked it a lot more than Murder on the Orient Express. I mean, the basic idea here, it's another murder mystery, right? You got kind of a group of various diverse characters who come together, and in this case, they wind up. It's not a train; it's a boat, and they're in Egypt and they're on the Nile. And the main focus is around a newlywed couple who is celebrating, who's basically on their honeymoon with a lot of, kind of wealthy friends and family. But they also wind up in the presence of the scorned woman who had been engaged to the new groom. And so there's this really testy love triangle type thing. And then somebody gets killed. And so there's a death on the Nile. I don't know if that is a very good way of explaining that or not.
No, that's perfect. Yeah.
No, but I mean, so basically you've got Armie Hammer, who is the groom, and Gal Gadot is his newlywed, his new bride, and Emma Mackey is Jacqueline, who is the scorned former fiance of Armie Hammer. And so they're kind of like the crux to this movie. And, then you have a murder and an investigation. And, of course, Kenneth Branagh is playing Hercule Poirot, as I murder my French pronunciation. But, no, I really enjoyed this one. I felt it was a lot. I don't know. I don't want to think that it's just because I wasn't familiar with the story this time, because since I've already seen like the other Murder on the Orient Express, I already kind of knew where things were going. But there were other things about that movie I just didn't like. Whereas this time, I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I like the performances, especially like Emma Mackey. I thought was awesome. I agree. Really, she totally stood out to me. In fact, and this is hilarious, and I hope this doesn't undercut what I'm trying to say, but like, I spent most of the movie trying to figure out, is that Margot Robbie? Like
right,
because she's so similar, but it's like, no, that's not, but that's wrong, right? Because I hadn't spent a whole lot of time, looking into all the press publications and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh my gosh, okay. So anyway, whoever that was, and it was Emma Mackey, holy cow, just really, like, excellent job.
Well, and a lot of the characters too, because like, it just added to that suspense, like, who can we really trust? And like, I think Russell Brand was also a really amazing performance, which was
once
very
you
surprising.
figure out it's him, right?
Yeah.
Because that was another one. It's like, holy cow, that's Russell Brand. And
right? He's cleaned up. What?
playing the anti-Russell Brand. But
the well-respected doctor, and it's crazy, but it was everyone, but especially like you said with Jackie's character, the ex-fiance, she was every scene very intense. So that was super fun.
Gal Gadot she's just kind of consistently strong. She has such a great presence that she was a good foil for Jackie, and and it's, I don't know, I think the one weird thing, right? And I guess I understand why this was included, because I see how it set something up later on. But I guess the one part of the movie that just seemed strange was the opening scene, which was this flashback to Poirot's service in, was that World War I?
Yeah, World War I.
And it's kind of like the origin story of his mustache in a way, but then it also is like setting up kind of, there are also some themes about kind of love and, affection. Like there were definitely things that came back, but opening the movie with a war sequence was just a little weird for me. And which I guess is kind of similar to what I didn't like about Murder on the Orient Express, was that it felt like at times they were trying to turn a murder mystery drama into too much of an action movie. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe that's just because of us, in the 21st century. But we have to have our action. But I don't know. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, no, I thought that was very interesting because so I made sure that I positioned myself. We went out with my in-laws to see this movie, and I made sure I positioned myself right next to my brother-in-law, who loves Death on the Nile and Agatha Christie. But this one in particular is his favorite story, and so I'm just trying to see his reaction. And I picked his brain immediately after, and that was something that was added. It wasn't in the book at all. But I mean, the origin story of the mustache, it's kind of funny, but I think it did develop into something deeper, because this movie, the theme is love and how it's just as deadly as it is beautiful. And
Yeah.
I thought that was very, very interesting. And I mean, we saw it with, I think, every character, and it was, I think it worked really, really well. So I did enjoy that, and I think it was kind of fun, the shift in look too. I think Kenneth Branagh was very good at like cinematic, right? And so I thought it was very beautifully shot, and it made him look younger. So like, I mean, it was. I will say though, with that theme of love, this movie is it's very sexually charged.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, no, that movie.
No, and that I noted that too.
Okay,
And
yeah.
it's for sure a PG-13 movie,
Yeah.
but it's the kind of PG-13 movie that kind of makes you raise your eyebrow a little bit. 'Cause it's like, wow, like there's nothing happening here that's like, change the rating, but we're kind of, wow.
I'm
Like
blushing
like
a
even
little. Yeah.
like there's you got some dirty dancing going on, and
Yeah.
it's no it, I that's funny because I had, of course, now that you mention that, because it's been a couple weeks since I saw it,
Yeah.
and so it's like, oh yeah, that's right, that is it. I think sexually charged is a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like it's not, it wouldn't be so prohibitive that it would, like I said, it would change the rating, but it kind of, it pushes against those boundaries a bit, and it's intense. Like, well, maybe like sexually intense would be a, because I don't know, which again is interesting, because that butts up against the notion of, okay, well, the difference between genuine love and, so maybe is what maybe what is happening in this movie has more to do with unbridled sexual passion than it does genuine love, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of what's.
I think it had its place. Like, it had a purpose. It wasn't trying to be gross. I think it was, on par with a theme that did show very. It was very good in expressing that. A little too good at some points, so like maybe don't bring young children into it, because it's kind of in your face a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's definitely, in terms of sexual content, like we said, it's not an R-rated film.
no, there's no nudity. I don't think. Yeah,
Well, I think the best way to put it for audiences who might be a little bit surprised by this is that if you're going into this as a regular PG-13 movie, you might be surprised because it's a little bit more, sexually intense than your normal PG-13, even though technically it's not an R-rated movie.
especially at the beginning. It doesn't carry on throughout. I think it's more
No, that's
used to
right.
establish the characters. But it's done in a way where like I was really excited when people started dropping dead. Like, I was ready for that, because I don't think I really liked.
I'm ready
any
for
of
some
the
of these people to
characters.
die.
But it made it really intense, because like I was totally fine with any of them dying, and I was totally fine with any of them being murderers. And I was just like, yes, this is a boat full of people who I don't really like, except for maybe a few.
Who deserve. Well, right, because I mean, even though the story is centered around this married
This couple, yeah.
it's kind of hard to say that there's a protagonist in this movie other than maybe Poirot, but even that
Yeah.
is like,
He's kind of observing all of this go down.
yeah, well, I mean, he's us, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're watching this story through his eyes and
Yep.
trying to figure out what happened through his actions. And stuff. So I guess that would have to be the way to. But no, it's, especially considering we were just kind of talking about the issue of likability with Uncharted. It's interesting that a movie like Death on the Nile, they're not making anybody likable. I mean, I guess Poirot, right? I mean, you're supposed to like him, but
And a few of the
everybody else.
passengers. Some of the passengers were really good. And they were very complex. Like, I mean, how I felt about these characters might differ from how you feel about these characters. Like, I know my favorites, but it's because of, this, and that, right?
Yeah.
And then some people might, identify more with the struggles of another person, where it's like, yeah, maybe they weren't, completely in the right, but I feel like they're justified. So there's that complexity in the characters that I
Yeah.
think was very interesting.
No, I really enjoyed it. Like I said,
Yeah.
there are particular things I can point to, but just in general, I liked it, and I liked it better than Murder on the Orient Express, and it makes me want to see more Agatha Christie adaptations and more screen time for Kenneth Branagh's prosthetic mustache. Bring on the stash.
Bring on the stash.
Okay, so I thought it might be kind of fun to finish on something a little more topical, though we're not going to make a big discussion out of this. I thought it would be fun for this episode, given that it's going to be coming out around President's Day, to nominate our favorite on-screen performance, interpretation, whatever you would like to say, of a U.S. president, real or fictional. And I was going to say, speaking of Kevin Costner, because I was thinking in my head that he had been the president, but I'm not sure if he has. I'm trying to, like, I saw him in 13 Days, but he was playing an advisor to President Kennedy, not the president. So,
yeah.
Of course, it wouldn't surprise me if at some point he had been cast as the president in some movie that maybe I just haven't seen. But anyway, enough Kevin Costner. Let's talk about President's Day. And so, because there's a lot to choose from, right? I mean, you think about, okay, well, how many different people? So I don't know if just asking for one is too hard a task, but what did you come up with?
Well, it's so funny you said 13 Days, because that was like one of the first ones I thought of.
Yeah, well, it was a good movie.
I really like that one. But, like, I mean, I'm not sure if I love it for the president. So, like, but I love it for that story and just that, I don't know, it makes me feel stressed, and it makes me wonder, like, oh my goodness, are we screwed as a country? So I and even though it was like in the past, like, it just, I don't know, it just feels like such a real issue, because it was, you know, and I think they handled that so well. Okay, I feel like you've chosen this one, so, like, I don't know if I want to steal it from you, but we could talk about it, because I think all across the board, I think this is considered the best representation of a president, and that's Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln. I mean, it's an incredible performance. You know,
that was my choice, but it is a good one. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You roll with it. You roll with it.
Yeah. No, man, and it's, you know, it's what you can expect from Daniel Day-Lewis, where it's like just so precise, so exact.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is attributed to the script too, where, you know, he's always going into these stories, and just the way that he kind of captivates a crowd, even one that's stressed out in the middle of a war. You know, he has this moment with them where he'll tell him some story from his past or something totally made up, but it just, those deliveries, it just, I don't know, you can see, you can kind of imagine a little bit better what he was like as a leader, and how, you know, Lincoln's role in U.S. history was just so important, and why we still talk about him so much today. And it's just, it's a beautiful movie, beautiful performance.
Well, I think I can echo a lot of what you feel, where when I think about that movie, I think I can kind of narrow down two things. One that I really, really liked, and one that makes me not really that crazy about the movie. The thing that I really liked is the thing that you've pointed out, which is Daniel Day-Lewis's performance as Lincoln, which is just, you know, I mean, it really feels like he has completely captured and lived in that role. And so his performance was really spectacular. Now, I don't know how much of that is based on other interpretations that we've been given over the years, because, you know, we don't have video of Abraham Lincoln. We have a couple of fleeting photographs, you know, and stuff. But, like, all of the mannerisms and the behavior and the characterization, it felt like he just completely nailed that. And so I love that. The movie, I've never been a huge fan of. I definitely appreciate the movie, but my big takeaway was that was a lot of speeches. Like, it kind of felt like it was like 2 or 3 hours, however long it was. And it felt like most of the movie was people taking turns giving long monologues, and which, kind of getting back to what we were talking about before, felt a little bit more like telling instead of showing. And now granted, I mean, this subject is not an action subject, even though so much of his, it takes place adjacent to the Civil War, right? But like, I don't know, in some ways it almost kind of felt like a stage play where you'd kind of expect, different people on stage to kind of take turns and
and say their lines,
the soliloquy, yeah. And so his performance I thought was amazing. The movie I haven't really felt like revisiting so much because it kind of feels, like a lot of speeches, good speeches,
yeah.
But I kind of felt myself thinking, okay, well, now what? Are we just going to hear another speech? And another, okay. Well,
that was what I liked about it, because I think the way the speeches worked was kind of a little different than what we were talking about earlier with the whole, I'm saying exactly what I mean. Because I think what the script actually did was it would go into these anecdotes where it feels unrelated at first, but then it gets to a point where you're thinking about it and you're like, oh, this is the greater implication. This is the message, but it's kind of hidden and you kind of have to think about it. Or there's a lot of things that aren't said. Like Tommy Lee Jones, I really like his storyline, where, he's just so passionate about ending slavery and all that, but he kind of, he realizes that, things kind of happen more gradually than he's wanting. And so, he kind of goes against what he wants, but it's for the greater good. And so, there are moments for him where you see his reactions, you see that change. There's a lot of things he doesn't say. And I really liked that. And I don't know. I feel like it's a movie where even though there's a lot of talking, it's not really talking at you. So I think I do enjoy that about it. But it is a lot of dialogue, and it actually made me think with Death on the Nile. Actually, a point that I did want to bring up with it. I'm sorry to bring it back, but I think another thing that worked with Death on the Nile is it also was pretty dialogue heavy. Like there wasn't a lot of action. But the way that they shot it kept it very interesting, like shooting through things. There was a lot of camera movement. Whereas with Lincoln, it is a lot more static kind of shots because it's trying to be intense and pull you in, but for every speech.
Yeah. Well, and see, I should clarify because I don't think there's anything wrong with a dialogue-heavy movie, right?
That's fair.
That's fine. It's and you're right, because Death on the Nile, I mean, it's a drama, right? It's a murder mystery. This is not an action film, and so you're going to have a lot of dialogue. I don't have a problem with the idea that Lincoln has a lot of dialogue. I just felt like there was a lot of speeches, right? So there was long,
formal,
so it wasn't
to a crowd.
Yeah, I mean, right,
no, for
just
sure.
a lot of long monologues. And again, I mean, it didn't ruin the movie for me. It didn't make me think, oh, this is a bad movie because of this. It just kind of made me think, oh, well, I don't like this as much as I might like it otherwise if it didn't feel like that was such a kind of a repetitive technique that's going on here. And and granted, I mean, I'm trying to remember all of the step by step of the plot and stuff. But I mean, isn't there? I mean, you wouldn't call it a courtroom drama, but
a lot of it kind of has those elements.
Yeah,
whether you're in the court or not, or I guess with the Senate or not.
But those are my takeaways from Lincoln is that definitely one of the best, not even just presidential interpretations, but like just really just a great acting performance in general. But I haven't felt like revisiting the movie, probably because I just remember a lot of speeches, But so you ready for me to give you a completely different take as my choice?
Oh goodness! See, I should have expected that. I'm like, Josh is gonna go for the obvious thing, and then I remember all of our top three.
Oh, give me a little more respect than that. Come
on. Okay. I'm
Well, no, and it's maybe it does say something about me because when I first came up with the idea, I started thinking like, okay, well, like which performance by Morgan Freeman are we going to choose? You know,
Right.
and I'm thinking about Independence Day. You know, with was it Bill Pullman? Was
Oh,
was
yes,
the president
yeah.
in there, and one of my longtime favorites is Kevin Kline in the movie Dave, about the guy he's a presidential impersonator who winds up getting drafted to take the president's place because the president like has some medical emergency, and so he's in a coma, and so it's like, oh, what if like an everyday guy was put in as president, you know? And of course Kevin Kline is one of my all-time favorites. But anyway, none of those are my choices because I can't possibly pick against Peter Sellers, who plays the president and various other roles in Doctor Strangelove, which is just an amazing movie. It's one of Stanley Kubrick's early movies. It's kind of a satire on politics and the Cold War, and you know, the kind of the Red Scare, late 1950s, early 1960s, and you know, who's got their finger on the button, and what if this happened. And the whole thing is about, you know, basically there's a military, I think it's he's a brigadier general, and he just kind of loses his mind, and he launches an assault, like a nuclear assault on the Soviet Union. And so everybody's kind of scrambling to figure out, how do we prevent World War III? And it's very, very comic, very over the top. But what's really cool about it, I mean, one of the things that's very cool about it is that Peter Sellers plays multiple roles in the movie. He plays a Captain Mandrake, who's kind of the Sterling Hayden is the brigadier general, and he's the one who goes nuts and launches the assault. And one of Sellers' characters is this Mandrake who's like on the scene trying to, you know, restore order and all this. He also plays the ex-Nazi German scientist who is now working for the Americans, who's Dr. Strangelove, you know, and so that's kind of where the title of the movie comes from. But then he also plays the U.S. president, and so a lot of like the plot is taking place in like this big war room, this very grandiose set where you have all the, you know, dramatic lighting and all these people sitting around this big table, and Sellers plays the president as just, what's so funny is that he's like the opposite of your traditional kind of authoritarian strongman leader. He's just kind of this, not timid, but just kind of everyday guy. And there's this one scene where he gets in a conversation with like the Russian premier or the Soviet premier, whoever it is, and they're trying to kind of figure out what's going on. And the way they talk is just like, it's like the way you might talk to your neighbor about like a dispute over somebody's dog crapping in somebody's yard, you know. Like it's so very, like, I don't want to give any kind of an impression of it or try to interpret it, because
You kind of have to experience it.
you really have to see it.
Yeah.
But it's such a funny and such a great performance and such an excellent movie. And so just, you know, maybe to kind of encourage anybody who hasn't taken the time to watch Doctor Strangelove yet.
Well, I haven't
so
seen
very
it
good.
yet. I know of it very well though, because like, I mean, it's just such popular satire, and I think a lot of things have copied it, and like from what I know, it's a very iconic film. So
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely on my
More
radar.
homework, I guess, huh?
I didn't realize that he played multiple characters. Peter Sellers played multiple characters, so that's kind of funny, adding to that satire.
Well, and he was gonna play another one. I think he actually had another. There's a bomber that is on its way to, you know, start the war, and so one of the plot threads takes place on board the bomber amid all of these. You know, James Earl Jones is actually one of the characters, and I'm trying to remember if that might have been the role that, because originally Sellers was going to play that role as well. and so he was going to have 4 roles, but I think he had some kind of an injury or something, and so he was only able to do the 3. But anyway, sorry, you were saying.
Goodness. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's really impressive. Oh, and I was also just going to add that I loved your approach to the president's thing, because I was thinking like biopics and everything, right?
Oh.
But
well, maybe I should have.
No. It was good because I think you probably would have looked at a lot of the ones that I did, and no, I love how there was kind of this theme too of like what the president represents in movies. And so, like, Bill Pullman, where it's like, he's this leader, we're all looking to him, and but there's also the satirical look, right, in Doctor Strangelove, or most recently in Don't Look Up with Meryl Streep, who's kind of this buffoon who kind of represents both the Republican and the Democrat Party at the same time. Like, just it was very, very interesting to watch that. So, I just. I really liked the fictional take, and it just makes me think a lot about, when you have a president in a movie, what their role is, what they represent, and how sometimes they'll be, a lot of the times it's political commentary, but also it can be that, this is our ultimate leader figure. So I think that was just such an interesting approach. I really liked that.
Well, I mean, maybe that's the best way to kind of sum it up, right? Is that if you're looking for an incredible portrayal of a real president, then you go to Lincoln. If you're looking for something that's a fun fictional president, then go to Dr. Strangelove. Very, 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 very different takes on the same, the same executive position. But
look at us taking care of you this holiday weekend.
That's right. Don't ever say that we never did anything for you. That's some great value for free. Right.
Oh,
okay,
gosh.
so Dani, you have done an excellent job of posting stuff to the website to read. What is there anything else you'd like to pitch to the good people, the good listeners of the Film Pod before we sign off this episode?
We're officially on Facebook, so please follow us at
that's right.
utah.film, just like the website domain, spelled out like that. And we really want to get this growing and do all we can to fulfill your movie needs and questions and everything.
Make all of your wildest dreams come true. Which is from an Idaho movie, so I guess that only kind of counts. It's only kind of appropriate. Well, thanks, Dani. Always good talking, and glad we had a lot of. It was kind of nice to have a few different movies to knock around today.
Right.
And so I don't know. I guess we got other stuff coming up. I'm not thinking of anything off the top. I'm thinking about spring break. Frankly, I'm thinking about getting out of town next month and going down to explore some of these southern Utah areas that Kevin Costner wants to film in. And maybe by next episode we'll find out if the bill passed. But until then. Check out our stuff. Check out the utah.film website. Check out our Facebook page. Listen to some old podcast episodes. Reminisce on the old times. And let us know what you think. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.